Hey guys, welcome to the prop shop where I'm going to teach you how to turn pieces of foam like this into something amazing. Like this. Let's get to it. So after watching The Mandalorian and absolutely loving the whole thing, I knew I needed to make something perfect. So I'm going to go with the helmet. This is a pattern I grabbed off of punishprops.com. I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can grab them for yourself and make your own helmet. Now, first things first, before we go ahead and trace anything onto foam, we're going to have to cut everything out. And that'll be as easy as a snap. Alright, so that's all done. Now we have to take all of this and transfer it onto some 6mm foam. Let's get started.
So when you do print this pattern out, you're only going to come up with the left side. That's because you're going to take the same exact pattern, flip it over, and that's going to be your right side. A lot of helmet patterns you'll find work like this, just so everything is going to end up being symmetrical in the very end. So I'm a little curious, just let me know what your favorite Star Wars movie is. Was it A New Hope, Rise of Skywalker, or maybe even The Mandalorian, which is obviously my favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And then we'll get right back to the build.
So now that we have everything all traced out onto our foam, we have our left side, our right side, all our registration marks with all of our numbers and letters and all types of things printed out onto our foam. Now it's time to start cutting them out. What you have to do is pay special close attention to only a few pieces. Now this is the cheek piece, and what it happens is it gets an outer bevel on it. This says it gets a 40-degree bevel if you look pretty close. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to guess. I'm not a scientist, I didn't go to school for that, so I'm just going to use my best judgment on this. Now you can too, or you can bust out some crazy tools. I'm just not going to do that, and it's going to look just fine, I promise.
So I'm going to start off by sectioning off some of these pieces, only some of them, just to make cutting them out a little bit easier. And always make sure you have a very sharp craft knife, because this is going to be the difference between actually cutting the foam and just tearing it.
Alright, so this is one of the pieces that's going to need the angle cut right along the outside right here. So what we're going to do, instead of cutting straight down, we're going to go ahead and take our craft knife, bend it at an inward angle, just slightly, and go right around where it says to. Now this is exactly 40 degrees, because I'm a genius, and I measured it in my brain. Alright, now that we have all of our pieces cut out, it's time to start gluing together. Now, you gotta pay really close attention to the registration marks. Everything's labeled, and all the registration marks need to line up, so it's gonna be a lot easier. Now I had everything separated to right and left files, and I just starting to realize that dropping them on my workbench was not a good idea. So, sort them first, then we'll start gluing.
So the glue we're going to be using today is contact cement. With contact cement, you apply it to the two things that you want to stick together, give it a little bit of time to dry, and then after that, stick them on together. Now that's going to create a bond that's going to be stronger than the foam. If you try to tear those two things apart, the foam is probably going to rip well before the seam does, or wherever you glued it. Now, when I apply the contact cement, I like to use a scrap piece of craft foam. It could be the smallest piece or biggest piece, whatever you want. And I kind of smooth it out. That normally speeds up the drying time because a thinner coat of contact cement will dry a lot faster than a thicker one. Or you can go ahead and also use a hairdryer to kind of speed everything up. That works well for a lot of the stuff I have to do outside because I work outside in the cold. Now, as I said before, make sure you pay close attention to the registration marks. That's going to be especially important for the cheek pieces with all the bevels that are laying on it, just to make sure everything lines up perfectly. And the rest of the helmet will fall into place.
So we have our right side and the left side. And all I have to do is just put contact cement on both sides of these and stick them together.
Now we're just going to do a rinse and repeat method with our contact cement and stick the middle of our helmet together. Now this is going to be very important to pay attention to the registration marks just to make sure everything fits together. Then right after that we're going to go right to the Rangefinders. So this is the basic pattern of the Rangefinder, the left side. Kind of broke it down into 2 layers. After that, kind of glued it all together. And then voila, a Rangefinder.
Alright, so after you're finished cutting everything out, it's going to end up something like this. Now there's just obviously just some pieces of foam layered all together. and we kind of dremel the sides a little bit so it has a little bit more dimension to it. Now these are going to be the earpieces or the rangefinders that are going to sit on the sides of the helmet. The next step is to add the trim that goes right above the visor, and then the ridge line that runs right down the center of the helmet. That's going to be the next step, and we're going to get right on that. Alright, so I forgot to hit record, but this is what I ended up coming up with. Now the trim right here, I just did with some 2mm craft foam, which is just going right along this part of the helmet. Right here, this ridge, I did with a 6mm craft foam and kind of gave it a little bit of a trim design right here with 2mm craft foam, just to give it extra design to it. It's kind of what I like. And I did this back vent piece right here. Now the outside of it is just made of 6mm craft foam. I cut the in part out, and all these little vent holes right here all made out of 2mm craft foams. Now they're just kind of layered on top of each other. And now the next step right here is all the edges we're going to sand down, use some Alex Fast Dry to kind of seal them all up, and then after that, seal it, and then paint it. That's it. Let's get to it.
So like I said, gonna go ahead and sand this by hand, kind of feeling for all the bumps and everything, see if I can get these seams as smooth as possible. After that, gonna go ahead and apply some of the Alex Fast Dry, which is basically just regular caulk you'd see in the bathroom. I think I went a little overboard on this one, added a little bit too much to it. After that, go ahead, smooth it out with some water. Kind of makes it smooth, and kind of gave it a little bit of an undesirable texture, but oh well. And then after that, I'm gonna go ahead and use my heat gun and seal up the rest of the foam. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and use 3 coats of plasti-dip to cover the whole thing.
After some coats of plasti-dip, I let everything dry overnight, and this is kind of what we came up with. Now our next step is to start painting. What we're going to use for that is some Plat FX paint. Now this paint is specially formulated for cosplay, and it's going to allow everything to bend and move without cracking, just like regular acrylic paints would. So for that, we're going to go ahead and use our airbrush. And this is the first time I'm going to be using this thing, so hopefully it's going to turn out well. This should eliminate a lot of brush strokes and everything else that's going to be going on top of the helmet, so it'll look like one clear paint job, just like it would in the regular factory. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting that done right now.
So this is my first time using the airbrush, and it was actually kind of cool, so I won't bore you with the rest of it, but essentially this was done with the rest of the helmet. Let's go ahead and speed things up. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and weather the rest of the helmet by using same black and brown acrylic paints mixed with a little bit of water. I'm going to cover the whole helmet with it and wipe 90% of it off. Now the Mandalorian helmet after I did the airbrush looked just a little too clean. I mean, he is chasing bounties after all, so let's make it a little dirty.
Alright, so we're almost all finished up. The last thing to do is put our visor into the helmet right here. Everything's looking great, and it's the final piece to do. Now, I went online and bought a visor piece right here. This is a Visor Shield replacement I just got off of a random website. I'll probably get these at Lowe's. I just didn't look hard enough, so what I'm going to do is cut out a T pattern, and then after that, hot glue right into there, and that's all going to be done. But first we're going to have to get the actual T pattern out of this little shield. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Alright, cool. It's kind of like a good looking little T pattern right there. Now, time to remove the protective film and hot glue it in there. And hopefully that'll be just as easy as shaking this thing around and cutting it out. So, there you have it, the Mandalorian. A lot of the things on this helmet came out fantastic. The first time using the airbrush, I think it came out pretty well. The visor was the first time I used that plastic piece. Now, as you can see, it's totally blacked out, but I have an excellent field of vision out of it. The small detail pieces on the back and for the rangefinders came out excellent. Now this is going to bring it to the end for me. I'll see you on the next build. But just remember, as a Mandalorian would say, this is the way.